Hello, I'm Dr. Vyvyane Loh. Uh, Welcome to our live stream Q&A, and I'm ready to take your questions or to hear from you what topics you want to discuss, whether tonight or maybe on an episode of my show. I feel like everybody's just coming out of the holidays and maybe settling in. Today's what, the 20th, and I think if I got it right, the 19th, I think the 19th of January is official like quit day. That's when most people quit their New Year's resolutions, So the gyms will clear out, they were packed the first few weeks of the year, but now you get your treadmill back or whatever, the weight rack back. So you don't have to fight with people. But yep, then it's back to normal, right? But I'm actually just getting ready for the next new year because today, let's see, on Sunday the 22nd is Chinese New Year. So I get to do it all over again. And because we're quite sensible, we don't celebrate it for one day. We we have a 14-day New Year cycle. So it actually goes from new moon to full moon. So you get your full 2 weeks worth, it's not like, oh, no, 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year, bye, right? You get to do it over and over for 2 weeks. And so yeah, we're just about to go into Chinese New Year, and it's a longer celebration. Anyway, I just finished making that episode on alcohol for dry January. I hope that was helpful for people. And it was also fun doing all the other episodes, getting in the uric acid and the fructose and the artificial. Well, it wasn't that fun doing the artificial sweetness, but we got those done. And I've got a lineup for the coming weeks as well. And if you're on live with me, it'd be great to let us know where you're tuning in from. I'd love to know which part of the country, which part of the world you may be tuning in from, and just to hear from you. What was your favorite episode? Which one you wish I would, kind of delve more into if there was a particular topic that you just wanted a little bit more information on. I try to make most of the episodes, um, informative. It's also hard to kind of guesstimate how much is too much. I tend to go overboard. So, when I actually make the notes to prepare to do the episodes, I kind of have to restrain myself a little bit and pare things down. But, if you think that you prefer more, I could do that too. Sometimes I look at the episodes and I go, oh boy, it's like an hour. And I try really hard to keep it tighter, but it is what it is, right? Okay. Um, Again, if you're around, make sure you type me your comments, your questions, if there's anything in particular that you want to know about. And some of the episodes that are coming up, I'm going to be moving into some of the bigger topics that I've always wanted to discuss. And so I'll inch my way there because there's so many components to it, right? So I've been prepping to kind of address the whole atherosclerosis topic. And that's a mega topic. And there are so many aspects to it, right? I know a lot of times when we think about atherosclerosis, it seems confined to certain things that you hear about the most. But there are many other aspects that I want us to kind of delve into. So this coming episode, the very next one, you'll you'll see some of the other components that I want to bring in that we haven't actually, I've not noticed us having much discussion on. So we'll start there and build our way up eventually to get a bigger picture of atherosclerosis. And the way I see this is it's kind of like doing a jigsaw puzzle. I don't like jigsaw puzzles, but um, the idea is you have all these pieces, and then when you put them together, one piece in itself, you know, is important because it forms it helps complete the picture. But in itself, that one piece doesn't tell you much, right? That piece only makes sense when you see it in context with the entire puzzle now, with all the other pieces plugged in. So, that's, I think, how I'm looking at it in terms of the bringing these big topics together. Hi, Mr. Blue. It's good to see you. Did you like your episodes? I did fructose, did uric acid. Had to split them up. You're the only person that got 2 episodes because that was a big one. And it was fun doing. I actually enjoyed both, and they gave me a lot of fun creative projects that I'm working on. So I'll keep that secret for now, but I have some projects based on the fructose episode and based on the uric acid episode. So if you have further requests, happy to hear them. Okay, those were fun. All right. Oh, good. I'm glad you like them. Um, and yeah, I was just saying, I'm now starting to build towards the bigger topics, and the first one I probably want to deal with is atherosclerosis. Now, I'm not going to do them sequentially. It's just, my brain doesn't think that way anyway, and such a big topic. But I'm starting to bring in some of the puzzle pieces so that eventually we'll have all the pieces. And then what I'd like to do is try to assemble those pieces so we can have a bigger view of something like atherosclerosis, something like dementia, things like that, those kinds of aging. Yeah, those things. Okay. Anybody else there, or anybody else would like to? Hi, Maya. How are you? I hope you're done with classes today. And oh, I wanted to say hi to your mom too. So hi, Maya's mom, because I know she's been listening. Thank you so much for listening. And also, if your mom has any requests, I will make sure I prioritize her on the list of requests. Okay, so good. Anybody else? A, B, any topics? C, any questions from any of the episodes that have come out so far? Okay. All right, Mr. Blue. Drive safe. Yeah, okay, Maya. Yeah. I think my favorite episode really in the last few was the uric acid one. Uh yeah, okay, skin. Yes. That's down the list. That's actually very interesting. Skin. And I probably will do it in conjunction with another one of my favorite topics. Teresa, migraines. Oh, hey, Teresa. It's great that you're on. Yay. Migraines. I could do a whole episode on migraines, but usually with migraines, the first thing I want to do is make sure that nutritionally, you're on the right track, making sure that you have enough magnesium. I like to make sure all the micronutrients are on track. So the vitamin D and the B vitamins and so forth. Definitely magnesium is a big player. And then, you know, decreasing inflammation, maybe switching out some of the processed carbs or going low carb, I think would be a good idea. So I am going to make sure that I put migraine on my list, Teresa, because I think a lot of people suffer from it and it's so debilitating. But for example, we know that if you supplement with magnesium, a good source of magnesium, that it may provide a lot of help for people. And some people have gotten a lot of benefit from going low carb to deal with their migraines. With my patient population, certainly the low carb has helped a great deal. But I also make sure I supplement, get the D's on board, get the other micronutrients on board. And magnesium is a big one for migraines. Okay. So, yeah, definitely stay tuned, and I will I will let people know when I get the migraine episode out, because I've been very fortunate that I've not had migraines, but I know a lot of people who do, and once it starts, it's almost like your life is on hold for sometimes days and maybe even a week. So, okay, and um, I'm also probably going to be doing part two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 of macrophages. I love macrophages, and they're so much involved in disease progression, disease initiation, even. So, no problem, Teresa. So I definitely want to kind of expand on that. And they have a role in things like degenerative diseases in the brain and also in atherosclerosis. So, uh, you know, I could talk about macrophages all day. So that's going to be, and then macrophages in the skin, right? There's just so many disease processes that they're involved in. And um, in immunometabolism, for example. So they're quite fascinating. But I'm going to be doing some of those episodes along the way. And then I'm probably going to bite the bullet and do the one on the weight loss drugs. Yeah, because that's, I wish I hadn't said that already on my live Q&A. Now I feel obligated. Um, just because A, that's been a big topic of discussion. B, people ask me all the time what I think of those medications. And C, I don't think, like most things in medicine, we're not looking at the big picture. We look at one piece and we assume that that one piece, if we tackle it, will solve everything else. And really, if you step back, you realize it's more complicated than that. So I'll probably do an episode on those weight loss medications. And I think some of you may have heard that now they're recommending that children, the pediatric population, get on them and also use bariatric surgery. Um, and I've been asked what my opinion is on that. So I think definitely I'll have to do an episode on that just to give a bigger view of this. Again, I think when we just focus on weight, we get into trouble because weight is only one aspect of metabolic disease, yeah? And people don't really think in terms of metabolic disease. They're thinking of a number on the scale, they're thinking of a BMI, right? And yeah, that's pretty limited. And you're going to get into big trouble if that's all you're focusing on long term, right? Again, we're bad at long term in the medical world. We only want to fix something for this today, this week, maybe this month. Um, are there other compounds you mean besides sorbitol, Mr. Blue? You're asking about the alcohol and the sweet artificial sweetness episode, that there's a process by which sorbitol and other alcohols could damage eye tissue. Are there other, like, high levels of caffeine? I haven't been aware of caffeine being a problem for the eye. I definitely would need to look that one up. But the sorbitol is well known just because we don't have a lot of the enzyme to further break down the sorbitol in eye. And so the sorbitol is going to accumulate in the eye tissue. And because of its osmotic effect, it's going to make, the cells swell in the eye. And the other thing is it glycates. So you're going to have those advanced glycation end products, and then you have a high oxidative, stress reaction there. You got lots of reactive oxygen species, and as a result, you damage the tissues in the eye. But I'm not aware of caffeine, so I will have to look that one up for you. Okay. All right. Anybody else? I'm not sure if there are other questions that I can. I mean, I wanted to do an episode on caffeine. I just thought, I don't know. I just feel like most people know about caffeine already. But unless somebody really wants me to do an episode, I'm definitely, like I said, the next episode coming up is already starting that one piece of the puzzle for atherosclerosis, and it's a pretty whopping big piece that never ever gets much, kind of discussion. And then I'll go on to the immune aspects of atherosclerosis, and we'll talk about the famous cholesterol and the wonderful lipoproteins. Each episode, I think, will look at different aspects of atherosclerosis. So I'm starting down that route, you know, in a not in a straight path, kind of meandering. Oh, that's a good question, Teresa. There's so many over-the-counter vitamins. How do we know which one is good to take? Yeah, well, um, I don't. So with the vitamins, yeah, there's a couple of things you have to keep in mind. A lot of times, the vitamin formulations, you know, because of price issues, they don't actually give you the bioactive or bioavailable vitamin. So they'll give you maybe some precursor form, and you're hoping with that precursor form that your body will convert it to the active form to use in your body. So, an example is most of the time in a vitamin supplement, you'll see carotene and they'll say it's vitamin A. It's not vitamin A, it's the molecule they hope your body will convert to vitamin A. Okay. Actually, that conversion is very unpredictable. So we don't really know in each person how much. It could be 3%, it could be 30%. Okay. That is converted from beta carotene to retinoic acid, which is the active form of vitamin A. So unfortunately, since we don't know, you have no idea what the impact may be. So that's one problem with these, formulations that you just find over the counter. The other thing, I just had a discussion with Anna, our coach here, and it had to do with some of these vitamins, especially the fat soluble ones. They are packaged in oil, like a gel capsule that is filled with oil as well. And the reason for it is that, you know, these fat soluble ones, they need to be in some kind of fat. So they'll package it in some kind of oil. And there's a good chance that that oil, having sat there for so long, may be rancid. Okay. So talking to Anna, she was very concerned about this, and she'd read some articles about how, the oils in some of these vitamin supplements, and typically it would be the omega-6 oils. So, Teresa, if you one of the episodes I talked about fat and the different types of fat, and there's a type called the omega-6, and those can turn bad and turn rancid, and they're also very, very inflammatory. So, a lot of these vitamin supplements are packaged in those oils. So, whether it's safflower oil or soybean oil, that kind of stuff, because those oils are cheap, right? So they package it in that, so it's easily, oxidized, and also, we don't really know what is in those supplements. So the formulation is sometimes not good, right? So yeah, you're absolutely right. How do we know which one is good to take? It's really not regulated, Teresa. unfortunately, and most of the supplement world is not regulated. And not only is it not regulated, right? What does that mean actually when you say it's not regulated? It means that it may say something on the label, but that might have nothing to do with what you find in the supplement itself. So, moving away, let's say from vitamins, okay, I'll give you an example for protein supplements. So, you go and you think you're getting some protein powder or some protein supplement. So, first of all, it may not be a complete protein because they may say protein content is such and such, but it may be just the cheapest amino acids, which are sort of the building blocks of protein, and they're not all of the protein, the amino acids that you need to be healthy, right? So it may not be a complete protein, and some of these powders may just have the cheapest kind of amino acids available. And then the other thing is when they've actually done random studies and supplies, and I've gotten these notifications time and time again, they found that, let's say it's advertised that per scoop of protein powder, it's 17 grams of protein. Well, when they tested different samples from different tubs of the same brand, same, supplement, they found that, okay, it may be 17 grams per scoop in one tub. In another tub, it may be 10 grams. It may be 20 grams in another tub. So there's no standardization. And it turns out that even the content, the amount of protein can vary greatly. And then the third thing that's really scary is that sometimes they have found other things in those supplements. So they've certainly found Prozac, and they found, depending on the types of supplements, whether they're protein powders or something to help you grow muscle, they've had different types of compounds in there. Um, so that's kind of worrisome to me. And of course, they may be contaminated as well with, metals, heavy metals, and things like that. So it's unregulated, and that's what makes it so scary. And the only thing I would say is that I mean, we try to source our supplements from a really reputable source, and you want to know where it's coming from. And if you get a chance to visit um, the manufacturing plant, it will tell you a lot. Because some of these plants don't have the best conditions, let me say, right? So, and then you have to, if you're really serious about it, you have to make sure that the humidity is right, right? The temperature is right for a lot of these things that you're, packaging as supplements, because that would change the quality of the supplements and whether they work or not. So I think, Mr. Blue, you're talking about ascorbic acid, right? That's easily oxidized. So again, it's really important. Is it exposed to light? Is what kind of conditions you know, were in the plant when they were manufacturing it, that kind of stuff, makes it really hard to know. So we just try to source ours from a really reputable company, and I just basically use something that is they only work with physicians. So at least you know where it's coming from. You get to visit the site. You know what the plant is like. All the manufacturing conditions and the storage conditions. Because if you manufacture it and then you store it in a place where, you don't control again for the heat, the humidity, the temperature, and so forth, then you're in trouble too. So, yeah, it's not a, a nice answer to hear, but that's unfortunately the truth when you hear about those over the counter vitamins, and supplements. I worry most about those again that are packaged in the oils, because those are quite inflammatory and everybody's popping them every day, right? Because most people, if they take their supplements, they're meaning to take it on a daily basis. Yeah. I could do an episode on that too. It's a little depressing. Okay. Any other questions for me? I'm not sure if I missed the question somewhere. No. Um, what else have I been thinking of talking about? I I think some of the ones that people found helpful, um, knowing what to do about the chocolate, knowing how to cook your foods, to keep them as, sort of free of those advanced glycation end products as possible. So there might be more topics around those areas that I could kind of find out. All right. Any other thoughts? Any other questions? I mean, and those of you who've watched, which was your Maya? Which was your favorite episode, for example? Like I said, I think I had a good time with uric acid, and I got some plans for that. Oh, you'll never look at chocolate the same again, Mr. Blue. I'll tell you this: I'm very lucky. I don't love chocolate, but the first thing I did was to look at cultivation of vanilla plants because I love vanilla. So the first thing I did was I saw the chocolate data and I just went, "Oh, what about vanilla?" I checked. And all the people who have, who are vanilla fans, so far so good. Okay. But the chocolate, I could take it or leave it. But I know a lot of people like were heartbroken with the whole chocolate issue. I mean, main thing is don't take it on an empty stomach, right? And that's my whole thing also. Don't snack. All right. Any other topics that you liked? I also liked the fructose one. And oh, you have another, you don't eat sweet. Okay. Maya liked the sleep episode. Okay, interesting. That's probably the one for students because someone else who's a student doing college courses, she also told me that she liked the sleep one. A topic on detoxing, like detoxing from, I'm not sure, like what substance were you thinking, Mr. Blue? Like generally detoxing, I'm not thinking alcohol, right? Alcohol detox would be something probably you're going to do with a professional, a health professional. But when you say detoxing, like from processed foods, oh, okay, like chelation. So Mr. Blue is saying you've seen a number of products claiming to be able to reduce or eliminate metals from the body, if it's possible and how it works. Yeah. Um, yes, you can chelate. So, for example, if you have like lead poisoning, yeah, if you have lead, exactly, heavy metals, right? Lead poisoning, you can chelate. Now, that decreases the amount of the heavy metals that you find in the bloodstream. I don't know if we're actually impacting the tissue itself. So that's something to worry about with the heavy metals. So if you notice, and I hope I'm not giving it away if you've not watched the alcohol episode, but you notice that for even up to a drink a day, you start to accumulate iron in the brain. Okay. And I did say in that episode, I should do a whole episode on iron. So there's iron is very interesting. So, um, you know, you can't actually easily, kind of get rid. Yeah, I don't think you can get rid of the brain iron, but getting rid of iron in other organs too is a challenge. And in fact, the main, like for people with hemochromatosis, the main thing is phlebotomy. So they ask them to donate blood, or you just kind of, it's like bloodletting, right? To decrease the iron content, hopefully, and the iron load to the liver. But there are some substances that you can use, yes, to do chelation. How that actually impacts the disease process caused by the heavy metals, we don't know for sure. Yeah, and the other thing is how often are you going to do this, right? So I can see that for an acute intoxication, and you're going to have a few rounds of chelation maybe, but then beyond that, I'm not sure, right? Again, if it's sequestered in tissue, it's you're not going to access it easily, So that's one of the problems with the heavy metals. But I am going to be doing, since you mentioned the heavy metals, I am going to be doing an episode on redox and redox signaling. And in that case, there are a lot of minerals that are really important in redox signaling. So that's a pretty interesting, because again, the way they teach redox in medical school is kind of looks very simplistic, right? But it's actually not. It's quite complex, and yeah, there's so many things that are play a role with the redox signaling. Ayoko says weight loss based on body type. Okay, that's a good question. Body type. So I know way back in the day they had different types of body type. What was it? Mesomorph and endomorph and ectomorph and that kind of stuff. And there was this idea that you had a certain body type, and then you would try, depending on your body type, different approaches to weight loss. I would say, I'm not sure about this ecto and endomorph thing, um, but I will say that if you look at body composition, that's one way to look at it. And the idea is that you maybe don't want only to focus, Ayoko, on weight, that you want to focus on the body composition. So again, I've had this over and over again. Recently had someone with a BMI of 20, and she was 46% body fat. Okay. So that means that 46% of her weight is coming from fat, and then the rest is bone and muscle and organs and stuff like that. And she actually had very low muscle mass. I believe she was definitely below the fifth percentile for muscle mass. That means, for people her age and her demographic, 95% of people had better muscle mass than her, right? So she was extremely low in muscle mass, and she had very high fat mass. So her BMI was normal. So this is not someone that, in fact, none of her doctors thought she should lose weight. And they told her that she was fine and there was nothing wrong with her. So maybe she didn't need to lose weight, but she definitely needed to change her body composition. And at 46% body fat, with a BMI of 20, that is normal weight obesity. So she has obesity, and everybody's like, how could she have obesity? Well, she's 46% body fat. That is not normal, right? So she has normal weight obesity, and she has no muscle mass. And over time, she's going to have less and less muscle, more and more fat. It's going to be harder and harder for her to maintain her weight, okay, as she grows older. And this is what she told me too. She said that as she aged, that she was getting, that she noticed the weight actually starting to rise, even though her BMI was still 20 at the time I saw her, which was very recent, right? So this is someone, I don't necessarily need her to lose weight, but I need her to lose fat, because at 46% body fat, she has increased risk for breast cancer and almost all cancers, right? And she also is really, she has metabolic syndrome. So because there was also a good amount of that fat was in the visceral, um, in the visceral uh, compartment. So it wasn't under her skin; it was inside her belly, and that fat gets into organs and so forth. And so that's why it's particularly dangerous and important to change her body composition. So someone like her with a BMI of 20, again, I see a lot of these. cases, and they're told they're fine. They're not. Okay, they're not. They have sarcopenic obesity, sarcopenic normal weight obesity. Okay, this means they don't have any muscles, they have sarcopenia, right? They're normal weight, but they have obesity because they have really high percent body fat. So that's someone that I would definitely work on to change the body composition. And then the priority in that person, obviously, is to increase muscle mass since she was so low in muscle, increase muscle mass and lose, especially the sick fat. Now, think about this. If she gained 5 pounds of muscle and lost 5 pounds of fat, her weight is going to be neutral, so she's not going to have any weight loss, but she's going to look different. She's going to fit in her clothes differently. And metabolically, she's a very different creature, right? And in terms of health benefits, it's very different from before. But the weight has stayed the same. We've just changed her body composition. Okay. So in someone like that, that's going to be the approach where you're going to prioritize the protein, you're going to prioritize the resistance training, the sleep, everything to decrease inflammation, and you also need to lose the bad fat. It's not easy to do, and that's why those people I supervise medically, because it's not easy to turn around. And yeah, it takes some work, but we've certainly done it, and we've done it in as little as 3 months, 3 to 6 months. Some people have been really impressive, but that means they're willing to really kind of commit to doing everything we ask them to do. And I supervise those people pretty tightly. If you're going to get results, you're going to need to really kind of follow the regimen very tightly, because deviating from that is not it's not going to give you any results, unfortunately, right? And Mr. Blue says his brain is magnetic from his younger years. I think we all are, right? That's the sad part. Oh, yes, you reminded me, actually, Mr. Blue. I'm going to be talking about, yeah, the brain as well, and the impact of the sick fat on the brain. So I'll do an episode on that. Ah, you are welcome, Ayoko. And yeah, I know a lot of people kind of get confused with the, and this is the issue as well, right? When with the talking about the whole weight loss drugs. Okay. So like I said, I'll probably do an episode on it, but it's a little painful for me to hear, because the focus of all those conversations, right? The focus of everything you read, the focus in the medical world is weight loss. I'm like, oh, we are going to get into trouble, right? If we're not going to consider the body composition. And clearly they're not considering that, right? Sort of almost like I don't know, it's very, very limited view. And it's almost impossible to get anyone in the medical world to even understand that, yeah, you are working against yourself if you're just going to focus on weight loss. Fasting, that's a good one. Um, I'll do one on fasting, right? And in fact, some new studies have come out that kind of support what I've been saying about fasting for a while. I don't think fasting is bad, and I think that fasting is great therapeutically for specific conditions. Yeah. So I have used, intermittent fasting, components of fasting with some patients. I've even had patients on full fast, depending on the condition, and not forever. They're not intermittent fasting forever, for example. We have a definite period, and we're looking for a certain result, and then we transition them on. But yeah, I could definitely do one on fasting. And that's a good topic. I think one of the things that makes it hard is that when you talk about metabolic health, a lot of people don't quite understand what metabolic health is, right? Even in the healthcare world. You say cancer, and most people know. You say heart disease, and people know. lung disease. Yeah, people know what that means, right? You say metabolic health, and it's like, what is that, right? It's very hard to define. And pretty much all chronic diseases, right, really have their roots in, metabolic health, metabolic dysfunction. And it's hard for people to take that in. So generally with my patient population or people who know my practice, they're like, oh, but I don't need to lose weight. So because I don't have a metabolic problem, I'm like, oh my God. Um, I have plenty of people who don't need to lose weight and they have profound metabolic dysfunction. And in fact, I just had the person I have a patient now. She is normal weight obesity. She's skinny fat. And her husband has obesity. Okay. And it's clear. Okay, but when she looked at her labs and when she looked at her DEXA, she's like, "Wow, I'm worse off than him." She could see that. Looking at her, I'm like, "Yeah, I hate to tell you." Okay, so that kind of shocked her, uh, and obviously, I think most people would not think of it that way. I keep saying over and over again, most people who have obesity, it's a good number of them, do have some a good subcutaneous compartment of fat that is protective. It is protecting you to a certain extent. Okay, have the obesity, but it has some protective value because it's not inside you and not in your organs, it's under the skin. But eventually, we're going to start accumulating in those organs as well. But at least in the beginning, it's protective. So, with this couple, for example, she didn't have a lot of the protective effect of subcutaneous fat, and her husband had more protection, right? So even though one obviously looked bigger, it turned out he was actually metabolically healthier than the person who looked thinner. So that's the part I wish more people in the healthcare world would understand. And then there'd be some more nuanced discussions around this issue of metabolic health, right? And that's the other thing that I've been thinking a lot about recently is that we now actually are unable to, um, see things, with nuance. We've lost that sense, right, of subtlety. And so now all we know are polarities. It's this or that. And nature A doesn't work that way, life doesn't work that way, right? But a lot of the discussions I hear, uh, on different medical topics are so this or that, black or white thinking, all or nothing thinking, and very polarized thinking, and they ignore the whole middle. And in fact, they're unaware the middle exists, right? And that to me is very scary. It's makes First of all, it's bad science, it's bad medicine. It's number one. And then, obviously your patients suffer as a result. But B, we get into these endless arguments and we're ignoring that there's a whole landscape. Okay. So, for example, in starting to talk about atherosclerosis, when we look at how many pieces there are in the whole jigsaw puzzle, right? It can be quite, staggering, um, to realize that, oh my God, it's not as simplistic as the way they taught it to us in medical school. So, they're still teaching it in a very simplistic way. And all the CMEs that doctors get, which are the continuing medical education, it's still in a very simplistic realm, right? And it ignores most of the players, right, in this disease process of atherosclerosis. It ignores most of the players and only prioritizes a few players as if that were the whole universe, right? So atherosclerosis, what do you think of? Think of cholesterol, right? Bad cholesterol, good cholesterol. See the polarities already? Bad cholesterol, good. So the one thing I hope people are learning, for example, in my discussion of uric acid, bad uric acid is bad. Well, it's a very potent antioxidant, right? So that's why I say, we have to really start to see the shades, to understand that nature is really good at modulating and she'll use whatever she needs. And there are all these tools at her disposal, right? And we don't know anything, really, you know. Hello, Paul. You eat once a day, and fasting for you is easy. Okay. And Mr. Blue also says that people take their food here as their personal identity and they kind of fight, yeah, over one thing or the other. So, again, lots of times people have traditionally, due to their culture or their beliefs or whatever, fasted. And, there are many reasons that people fast. Looking from just a purely metabolic perspective, my main worry as people get older, so as you progress in age, it's going to be an issue in terms of keeping the muscle mass on, right? Because we get this kind of anabolic resistance. And Paul is saying and sharing that he doesn't eat breakfast, which is what I find it's very typical of people who do intermittent fasting or who just have one meal a day, the OMAD or the two meal a day kind of thing. They tend to start their meals late in the day. So, and again, that might work for you. It might work for your body, your lifestyle, and so forth. Looking from a general metabolic perspective, then the concern is that we're off the clock, right? We want you're starting to see a lot of studies in the timing of your meals and that circadian clock in feeding, right? Because we are going to set our clock by the feeding times, for example, and we want to keep it as tightly kind of regulated as possible. There's some variation always, right? So what we've always for a long time with our patients had, pretty strict meal intervals and timing of meals, and we've set the time to follow that circadian clock. So generally, I use that approach to kind of get people on track with their metabolic health. But again, everybody has their own preference based on what I see from the studies. And for muscle mass, especially, it's pretty impossible to get enough protein in. And the thing is, some people say, well, I eat a lot of protein in one meal. Well, that excess protein is converted to glucose, right? And so you're going to have some increase in glucose and you're going to have as well an insulin spike. So I personally, for example, I don't eat many carbs. Okay. Am I in ketosis? No, no way. I eat way too much protein to be in ketosis, right? So typically when you are on a ketogenic diet, a lot of people think it's just low carb. Well, technically, a medical ketogenic diet, you're going to actually count the carbs and protein, okay? Because the proteins can be converted uh, to glucose as well, right? So we can have gluconeogenic pathways for that. So as a result, when you are actually really trying to do a ketogenic diet, technically you are counting both carbs and protein. Most people who are doing keto are counting only carbs, right? And the way you know that is because they post pictures of their meals on Instagram. It looks very yummy, but it's definitely not ketogenic. When I look at the size of the meat or whatever, I'm like, okay, that's a lot of protein. And it's fine. I don't believe people need to stay in ketosis. I'm just saying that technically, if you think you're doing keto, probably not, especially if you're high on the protein, right? But so back to the anabolic resistance, you can have a whole load of protein, but it's going to be converted, first of all, to glucose. You might not absorb all of it. That's another thing. and you don't actually process it that way. So when they've done studies, for example, where this was a study with women where they gave 90 grams of protein per day, and there were two groups. One group was told they could have it anytime in the day, just, have 10 grams now, 40 grams later. As long as by the end of the day, you get your 90 grams in, we're good. Okay. That was group A. Group B was told you're just going to eat it 30 grams, 30 grams, 30 grams, right? And the only group that had muscle synthesis, protein synthesis, was in the 30, 30, 30. Okay. It takes a certain amount of protein to turn on that mTOR switch, okay, to make protein. That's number one. But excess, we are going to prioritize a gluconeogenic pathway. So, in other words, having all your protein in one meal is not going to give you the same effects as, this certain portion per meal. Okay. And you have to hit that switch per meal. So, it's really hard. I tried to crank the numbers to, squeeze it in with intermittent fasting. It's not been, I couldn't do it. So then the worry is that people start to lose muscle mass and get sarcopenic, which I certainly see in my population. So in my cancer patients, depending on where they are in their cancer treatment, like around chemo and so forth, I may fast them. Okay. But again, they're not living their lifestyle that way. And the other worry with someone with cancer, for example, is they lose muscle mass, they get into cancer cachexia, and 20% of cancer patients die from the loss of muscle mass, not from the cancer, not from the treatment, but from the loss of the muscle mass. Okay. And that is also true for cardiac cachexia, pulmonary cachexia, right? Renal cachexia. People with renal disease, they all don't have enough muscle mass, right? Most nephrologists will tell you that up front. So, because I treat a population of patients that have chronic disease, I rarely will fast them because I'm worried about, their mortality. Because again, your mortality is increased with decreased muscle mass. So that's one of the reasons I'm always such a stickler for body composition, because people don't understand that that has a huge impact on your health, right? And the other thing is, if you lose muscle, there's nowhere for that glucose to go. Go into fat. You can eat the same, right? But over time, as someone loses muscle, you eat the same meals. And through the years, 1, 2 years, 3 years later, as they're losing muscle, yeah, there's less of a reservoir for the glucose to go into. You have now a smaller muscle mass. And that's why this is particularly devastating for diabetics, right? Diabetics have accelerated muscle loss. Like every time I see a diabetic patient, I'm worried about. They can lose weight. It's not difficult to make them lose weight. It's very hard to preserve their muscle or to grow their muscle compartment. Very hard, right? You got to decrease the inflammation and so forth. So in those patients, I really have a lot of concerns in restricting their meals and not getting enough protein in. So that's kind of why I do that. And like I said, I use fasting as a therapeutic option in some patients under certain conditions, but it's not generally a lifestyle thing. Okay. But those are great things to bring up. And I'm glad that, we had that discussion. I mean, again, people are going to do things that will help them feel their best. My main thing is, as you age, it's really important to keep your eye on the muscle, and please do it with a real DEXA. I know there's lots of people promoting the whole like um, bioimpedance thing, and it will. No, I've not seen it be accurate, and I've done this for a long time. And would have been much easier for me to use one of those clinically, but I just found that this wasn't going to help my patients, so we kind of just gave in and got a DEXA. But definitely, as if you're I would say even the young ones, because I have people in their 20s and they're getting their DEXAs, and it's very helpful. For example, I have one patient I knew he was going into surgery, and we dexed him, and then we also did an RMR, and we're matching, his energy intake, because with surgery you need more nutrition, and we had to up his, nutrition, and make sure that he would get through the wound healing part well, and the stress of surgery, so it wouldn't be a major catabolic crisis for him. And then we dex him after, to make sure he's preserved that muscle mass, right? So we're pretty careful that way, even in the young ones. But definitely above the age of 30, you should get a DEXA to take a look at where you are, benchmark your body composition, and then every year, you should be checking, because there's almost no radiation. Okay, it's not like a CT scan, but the results, correlate with CT. So that's the great thing about the DEXA. So definitely get a DEXA and see where your body composition is, and then you can see whether your dietary regimen is helping or hurting your, metabolic health. So that's one sort of a objective way to look at it. Okay. All right. I think we're coming up on the hour. Unless someone has a burning question or has a topic they really want me to kind of, put in the next quarter, I guess. Um, like I said, I have a few other ideas for the coming quarter, and also starting to approach people for, interviews. So that should be fun as well. No one? Okay, well, look out for the next episode coming up. As I said, will be one little puzzle piece towards the bigger picture of atherosclerosis. And then also want to just say thank you to all of you who joined in today. Mr. Blue, it's always lovely. And Maya, Ayoko, thank you. And Paul, welcome. And thank you for checking in today. And I know sometimes people listen in and maybe they don't um, kind of add in the comments, whoever you are. I'm glad you joined us. Ayoko, optimal nutrition absorption. Okay. Yeah, that may be one I can do. Yeah. Just because there's so many things that impede our absorption of nutrients that we are doing in our daily lives, right? All those people on proton pump inhibitors. Um, Okay, so I will keep that in mind, and I hope to see you again, all of you, at the next live Q&A. Those of you who celebrate Chinese New Year, okay, Maya, 新年快乐, okay? Happy New Year, and a big hug to all of you. Bye. All right, I gotta